They mocked Earth from the moment humanity was admitted into the Galactic Empire. To the alien delegates seated in the glittering halls of the High Council, humans were a curiosity at best, a frail animal that had somehow stitched together a civilization. Every Empire officer present at the induction ceremony remembered the same joke whispered from mandible to tendril. How quaint that these bipeds think their special forces mean anything in the scale of interstellar war. The Empire was vast, spanning 1,000 systems, 100,000 worlds. Its armies marched in formations of towering war machines, piloted by minds bred for battle and supplemented with fleets that could scorch planets from orbit. To them, soldiers were just extensions of technology. No one fought with their hands, no one crept through mud or dark. Wars were decided by algorithms long before any enemy was seen. Against this backdrop, the idea of Earth soldiers, men and women trained with rifles, knives, and endurance, was comedy. The laughter reached its height when the Council was shown a presentation of Earth's famed Special Air Service. Black and white training footage, humans crawling under barbed wire, navigating wilderness with only a compass, enduring weeks without rest or food. The chamber erupted. Some alien dignitaries slapped appendages together in amusement, others wheezed and hissed in disbelief. Primitives, one counselor sneered, measuring their strength in sweat and broken bones. Our machines fight entire wars while they play at survival. Earth's representatives held their silence. They had seen the snickers before. Humanity had clawed its way into the Empire not through power, but persistence. Earth's worth was dismissed with a wave: cheap labor, raw materials, a backwater world. Its soldiers were a ceremonial flourish, tolerated but not respected. And yet, deep in the ranks of the SAS, one operative listened to the laughter and said nothing, because he knew silence was often sharper than any retort. The chance to test that silence came swiftly. At the edge of the Empire, a rebellion festered in the asteroid belts of the Dravos expanse. The rebels were not amateurs. They were veterans of skirmishes who understood imperial patterns and exploited them ruthlessly. Their bases were dug into shifting rocks, shielded by storms that scrambled sensors, their networks invisible to even the sharpest AI eyes. Imperial fleets floundered there, unable to pin down the enemy. The Council convened to debate strategy, and amid the tension, one admiral spoke with deliberate mockery. Let the humans test their legendary endurance. Send them where our machines cannot go. If they fail, the loss is negligible. Laughter filled the chamber again, but this time it carried a trace of malice. The order passed down with casual cruelty: Earth's forces would deploy, observed not as allies but as curiosities. The Empire wanted entertainment, a spectacle of futility. It was expected that the humans would stumble in the dark until the rebels burned them alive. When the directive reached Earth's contingent, most braced for humiliation. They had no fleets, no towering walkers, no swarms of drones. But they had something else, something older than the Empire itself: the knowledge that wars are not always won by the loudest gun or the brightest beam. Sometimes they are won by the soldier who does not break, who finds a path when no machine can calculate one. Among those chosen for deployment was the SAS Operative, who had remained silent during the jeers. He carried no extraordinary rank, no loud reputation. To his comrades he was simply reliable, a man whose presence in the field steadied others. He did not need recognition, nor did he seek it. His purpose was singular: mission above ego. He knew the Empire did not believe in him. That was an advantage. No one expects much from a ghost until the moment the knife is at their throat. The orders were brief: infiltrate, gather intelligence, sabotage if possible. No further detail, no backup, no guarantees. To the Empire's strategists, it was little more than a dare. To the operative, it was a familiar kind of clarity. Hardship was not new to him. It was the air he breathed. He had spent years mastering discomfort, erasing fear, teaching his body to obey long after logic demanded collapse. Where others saw the void of the asteroid belt as a death sentence, he saw an environment, another wilderness to map, another puzzle to solve. The deployment shuttle carried him and a small team into the expanse, its hull shuddering against radiation storms. Alien officers watched the transmission with smug detachment, already predicting the moment of failure. They expected panic, disarray, some desperate plea for extraction. What they did not recognize, what they could not yet understand, was that humans had always thrived in the margins where certainty failed. They had survived ice ages, plagues, endless wars. They had risen not because they were the strongest, but because they were the most relentless. As the shuttle vanished into the swirling storms, the Empire's laughter still echoed through the halls of power. They thought they were witnessing a spectacle of folly. They did not realize they had just unleashed something far more dangerous than fleets or machines. They had unleashed a human who had been forged in silence, and silence is often the last sound before victory. The asteroid belt was alive with storms that made machines blind. Electromagnetic surges flickered across jagged rocks, rendering scanners useless and navigation algorithms meaningless. The Empire's fleets lingered at the periphery, frustrated and impotent, unwilling to risk their billion-credit warships in terrain where their superiority meant nothing. Into this void went the humans, small and quiet, stepping where giants feared to tread. For the SAS Operative, the environment was not a curse but a test he had trained for his entire career. The Empire had mocked Earth's obsolete methods, map, compass, memory, instinct, but now those same methods were all that worked. While Imperial officers demanded perfect data before acting, the human moved forward with fragments, piecing together patterns in the storms, reading the drift of asteroids the way his ancestors once read shifting sand or snow. To him, disorientation was not defeat, it was familiar ground. The mission was clear in its simplicity: reach the rebel stronghold hidden within the labyrinth, and dismantle it from within. Clarity did not mean ease. The rebels had mined narrow passages, set traps designed to shred even the hardiest machines, and deployed patrols adapted to the dark. Yet where the Empire saw only a wall, the Operative saw cracks. He had been taught that every fortress, no matter how impenetrable, has a flaw. Finding it was not a question of tools but of will. The small team spread out, but the Operative pressed deepest, volunteering to take the most dangerous route. His reasoning was practical: fewer chances for compromise, fewer variables to depend on. He relied on silence, not broadcasts, and trusted only the rhythms of his own body. Weeks of survival training had conditioned him to move with as little energy as possible, rationing every breath, every calorie, every second of focus. Machines shut down in storms like this. He remained persistent as gravity. The rebels were not careless. They knew the Empire relied on machines and had sculpted their defenses accordingly. Signal jammers created a maze of false echoes, decoys drew scanners away, and energy spikes lured drones into collisions. But the Operative did not bring machines that needed to be fooled. He brought patience, a virtue no algorithm possessed. Hours passed as he lay pressed against cold stone, watching patrol routes repeat until he understood the timing down to the heartbeat. Days went by as he rationed food into crumbs, waiting for a single opening. Hunger sharpened him, exhaustion steadied him. These were conditions in which humans had always adapted, while empires that relied on convenience faltered. Inside the labyrinth, he began his work. His tools were simple: charges small enough to fit in a pocket, wires cut by hand, blades kept sharp in cloth wraps. He sabotaged power conduits, one at a time, ensuring no pattern revealed itself too quickly. He let suspicion bloom among the rebels as lights failed and systems flickered. He sowed doubt with precision, not chaos. To those who lived in the fortress, it felt like the asteroid itself had turned hostile. Fear traveled faster than any signal. Rebels whispered of a phantom that moved unseen, a shadow immune to their scanners. The Operative did nothing to contradict the legend. He left no signs of humanity, no footprints but those erased, no gear but what he carried away. His presence was an idea more than a body, and ideas can be deadlier than weapons. When the time came to strike harder, he adapted without hesitation. An opportunity presented itself, a supply skiff inbound through the narrow channels, laden with weapons and fuel. Machines would have failed to navigate the turbulence, but he hijacked it by hand, slipping aboard and silencing its crew with brutal efficiency. He turned the vessel's payload into traps, scattering charges where they would do the most damage. In the confusion that followed, whole wings of the stronghold went dark, their defenses collapsing in sequence. From the perspective of the Empire's observers, the reports made no sense. They had expected failure, perhaps a brief skirmish before annihilation. Instead, they received fragmented intelligence, rebel supply lines disrupted, command nodes silenced, surveillance feeds cut off one after another. No one could explain how. The officers whispered about faulty data, but the pattern was undeniable. Someone inside was dismantling the rebellion with methods no imperial system could replicate. The operative never broadcast his progress. His silence was deliberate. Every action carried weight, every strike designed to feed the rebels' paranoia and cripple their cohesion. He fought not with overwhelming force but with precision, with patience sharpened into a weapon. Where the Empire relied on technology to overwhelm, he relied on discipline to endure. Where machines required certainty, he acted within uncertainty as though it were his home. By the time the rebels realized they were being hunted, their cohesion had already fractured. Patrols doubled back on themselves. Supplies vanished into voids they could not trace. Fighters turned their weapons inward, firing at shadows and panic. The operative pressed further, closer to the heart of the fortress, knowing that fear had already softened it for the final blow. In the darkness of the belt, a lone human thrived where empires faltered. He did not need their machines. He needed only the endurance to take one step further, one breath longer, 1 second more than anyone else could manage. It was enough. The deeper he pushed into the fortress, the clearer the effect of his work became. What had once been a disciplined rebel bastion now pulsed with tension. Corridors once patrolled with confidence now echoed with shouts and sudden bursts of weapons fire aimed at phantoms. Systems that had run with mechanical precision now flickered, sputtered, and died in uneven intervals. Fear had become a stronger ally to the operative than any weapon he carried. He had reduced an army to confusion without revealing his face or name. The rebels began to hunt their own mistakes. They suspected traitors, sabotaged each other's plans, and second-guessed every order. The operative understood this pattern well. Humans had long known how fragile groups became when trust dissolved. He pressed on, worsening the fractures. He cut power to isolated quarters, forcing rebels to move through choke points he could monitor. He laid traps that appeared as accidents, so the deaths of rebel fighters looked like mishaps rather than assassinations. Each misfortune fueled their paranoia until cohesion cracked. At the core of the asteroid fortress lay their command center, heavily shielded and buried in rock. Machines could not penetrate its shell, and the Empire's fleets had wasted months battering the periphery with no progress. The operative saw it differently. To him, the shield was not invincible but dependent, powered by conduits hidden in stone. He traced them like veins, crawling through shafts so narrow his body bruised with every inch. Hours bled into days as he moved in silence, feeding on ration crumbs, muscles trembling yet mind sharpened. Finally, he found the node where the fortress drew its strength. He dismantled it without theatrics, using steady hands honed by endless drills. A handful of carefully placed charges severed the shield's heart. No alarms sounded at first, no blaze of explosions. The fortress simply dimmed. A flicker. A shiver. Then the unthinkable. The defenses that had mocked Imperial fleets fell quiet, their shields collapsing into static. The Empire's monitors caught it immediately. Officers stared at their displays in disbelief. For months, machines had failed to scratch the rebel fortress. Now, without warning, its shields were gone. Some argued it was luck. Others called it sabotage from within. None could fathom that a single human had crawled into the dark and cut out the fortress's beating heart with his bare hands. The operative did not stop there. With the shields gone, the fortress became vulnerable, but vulnerability was not defeat. He knew the Empire's fleets would hesitate, unwilling to risk firepower until certainty was confirmed. That gave him time to strike further. He seized upon the chaos, infiltrating deeper into command. He moved with deliberate patience, neutralizing guards with swift violence, leaving behind only silence. At last, he reached the central chamber. Data cores glowed within, housing the rebellion's strategies, allies, and supply networks. To destroy them outright would cripple this one stronghold, but to steal them would unravel the entire movement. Machines could not operate here, sensors scrambled, drones blinded. But a human hand could still slot into consoles, pulling data shard by shard, memorizing what could not be carried. The operative chose both paths, extraction and ruin. He copied what he could, then set charges to obliterate what remained. The blast tore through the command center just as he slipped away, leaving wreckage in his wake. Rebels poured into the chamber only to find their future reduced to fire and ash. Word spread fast: their fortress was bleeding, their leaders dead, their secrets stolen. Morale collapsed in a wave faster than any bombardment. Entire units deserted. Others surrendered. The legend of the Phantom in the dark solidified into terror, each survivor swearing they had glimpsed a figure that no scanner detected, a shadow that could not be caught. When the operative finally surfaced from the labyrinth, his body was failing. Weeks without proper sustenance had gnawed at his strength. His uniform was torn, skin bruised, eyes sunken from exhaustion. Yet he still moved, still carried with him the stolen data shards, still breathed with the calm of one who had endured worse. His mission was complete. Imperial officers who received the intelligence scarcely believed it. Maps, codes, supply chains, the rebellion's entire nervous system lay bare. This was not luck or coincidence. This was deliberate, surgical. They could no longer dismiss it as chance. Someone had achieved what their fleets could not. And that someone was human. In the council chambers, disbelief turned to silence. Those who had laughed at Earth were forced to reconcile with undeniable results. Machines had failed. Protocols had failed. Yet a single operative, dismissed as primitive, had delivered victory. The old assumptions began to crumble. If one human could dismantle a fortress, what might an entire regiment do? The operative himself asked for nothing. He did not broadcast his triumph, nor claim honors. His silence continued, steady and unbroken. But his actions spoke louder than any declaration. The Empire, for the first time, felt the weight of humanity not as an afterthought, but as a force. One man, moving unseen, had shifted the balance of a galactic war. And though his body faltered, his will had proven unshakable. The rebels whispered of a ghost. The Empire began to whisper of something more dangerous, a human who thrived where machines died. And whispers, once started, cannot be silenced. The rebellion's collapse was sudden, not because their numbers had dwindled, but because their confidence had been broken beyond repair. Rumors of a phantom operative spread faster than any order, and soon entire detachments abandoned their posts. Supply convoys ceased to move, commanders no longer trusted their lieutenants, and no one dared remain in the darkness of the asteroid stronghold for long. When Imperial fleets advanced once more, they encountered little resistance. Where they had once been humiliated by failure, now they watched an enemy unravel from the inside out. At first the Empire's commanders dismissed the outcome as coincidence, a quirk of timing, a weakness in rebel structure. Yet the evidence piled too high to ignore. The stolen data was irrefutable, the destroyed command center undeniable, and the precision of the strikes too sharp to be accident. Reluctantly, they admitted that the turning point had not come from their machines or admirals. It had come from one human operative who had endured where technology had faltered. The council gathered in uneasy silence, no laughter this time. The same figures who had once ridiculed Earth now debated with grim faces. For generations, they had trusted in the certainty of their technology. Drones mapped every battlefield, algorithms calculated every variable, and war was fought from a distance. Humanity had exposed a flaw that no one else dared acknowledge. When the environment stripped away machines, the Empire was blind. Humans were not. Reports from soldiers stationed near the expanse trickled back with bewilderment. Veterans from dozens of species, each larger and stronger than the frail human, admitted they had never seen anything like it. They watched one operative dismantle an army with patience and precision, relying only on skill and endurance. To them, the man seemed less like a soldier and more like a force of nature. Where they required power armor, heavy weapons, or neural links, he carried nothing but grit. The Empire's most hardened generals found themselves asking uncomfortable questions. How had a lesser species succeeded where their elite had failed? Why did a human achieve what entire fleets could not? The answer, though simple, was not easy for them to accept. Humanity had never relied on superiority of body or machine. They had relied on adaptation, on creativity when trapped, on stubborn refusal to break even when logic demanded surrender. They turned obstacles into training, scarcity into resource, and danger into familiarity. It was not strength the Empire had overlooked, but resilience. The operatives' deeds spread through barracks and academies as stories always do. Cadets repeated tales of the lone human who crawled through stone to tear out the heart of a fortress. Soldiers who had once mocked Earth's recruits began to nod in quiet respect when they marched past. A shift was taking place, not born of propaganda or policy, but of recognition. The galaxy had witnessed a truth no machine could obscure. Earth itself felt the change. Once treated as a minor world, its representatives now entered council chambers without sneers snapping at their heels. Invitations came for training exchanges. Military advisors requested to study Earth's unconventional methods. The very things once laughed at, survival courses, endurance drills, silent infiltration, were now subjects of fascination. What had been called primitive was now understood as indispensable. The operative who had sparked this transformation never stepped forward to take the credit. His name remained classified, his face unknown outside of those who had fought beside him. That anonymity only magnified the legend. To alien ears, the story became larger than a man, the faceless soldier from Earth who had walked where machines died, who had toppled a rebellion with nothing but patience and will. In every telling, he grew more myth than mortal, and myths have power long after battles are forgotten. The Council could no longer dismiss humanity. They had mocked Earth's place in the Empire, but the laughter had ended. Now they considered possibilities with wary calculation. If one operative could cripple a fortress, what could a regiment of such soldiers achieve? If humanity thrived in environments where machines failed, then Earth was not a liability, but a resource too dangerous to waste. For the first time, the Empire recognized that its survival in hostile reaches might one day depend not on its fleets, but on the resilience of humans. Respect did not arrive with applause or declarations. It arrived in silence, in the careful way counselors avoided careless jokes, in the measured tone of commanders who now spoke of Earth with caution. A shift had occurred in the balance of perception. Where there had been ridicule, now there was recognition. And recognition, once granted, could never be taken back. The operative returned from the mission broken in body but unshaken in will. He asked for nothing, offered no speeches, gave no explanations. Yet his presence alone had already redrawn the lines of power in the galaxy. The Empire had learned a lesson it would not forget: when all else fails, when machines are blinded and certainty collapses, a human will still endure. When the dust of the rebellion finally settled, the galaxy carried forward not the memory of fleets or bombardments, but the shadow of a single human. The Empire had claimed victory on paper, but every officer knew the truth: that the turning point had come from an operative who fought alone, unseen, and reshaped the outcome of a campaign through willpower no machine could match. From that moment, humanity's place in the galactic order was altered forever. The operative himself did not remain for celebration. His return to imperial lines was quiet, body worn to the edge of collapse. He submitted his intelligence, confirmed his charges had completed their work, and then faded from official record. No award ceremony was held, no parade arranged. His absence only sharpened the myth. To soldiers across the stars, it became easier to believe he had not survived, that he had given every ounce of his strength to secure the victory. Death, after all, only strengthens legends. Yet whispers persisted that he had been seen again, far from the expanse, already preparing for another mission. The uncertainty fueled the aura around him, not a man, but a symbol. Among alien species that had once laughed at Earth's traditions, stories of the ghost operative spread like wildfire. Parents repeated the tale to their children at night, describing how one fragile-looking human had undone an army in silence. Veterans spoke of him in mess halls, recalling the moment rebel transmissions turned frantic with fear of something they could not detect. The rebels themselves, those who survived, cursed the phantom that walked unseen, swearing they would rather face an entire Imperial battalion than the solitary predator from Earth. His name was never spoken, but his deeds spoke loudly enough. Earth's reputation shifted in ways no diplomacy ever could have achieved. Before, its representatives had endured ridicule, barely tolerated in council chambers. Now they were approached with a new caution. Commanders requested human advisors to train their own soldiers, seeking to understand endurance that could not be programmed. Entire academies began to analyze Earth's history of unconventional warfare, small units defying larger forces, insurgencies wearing down empires, resilience in the face of catastrophe. What had been mocked as primitive suddenly became a doctrine worth studying. The council itself debated quietly what humanity's rise would mean. If one man could do so much, what would an organized force accomplish? If humans thrived where machines failed, then their strategic value in uncharted sectors was immeasurable. No one dared say it aloud, but some feared what would happen if humans ever turned those same abilities against the Empire itself. Respect, once absent, was now tinged with caution. The galaxy had learned to measure Earth not in weakness, but in unpredictability. The operative's anonymity became his greatest legacy. Because no image existed, every retelling reshaped him. Some swore he had moved like a shadow through rock, others insisted he fought with nothing but a knife, others claimed he could wait for days without breathing. Each exaggeration only strengthened the myth. To Earth's enemies, he was a warning. To Earth's allies, he was proof of potential. To the Empire, he was a reminder that reliance on machines had blinded them to the oldest truth of war: determination outlasts calculation. In time, Earth soldiers marched beside their alien counterparts without derision. Where once jeers had followed them, now silence did, a silence born not of dismissal but of wary respect. The humans themselves remained unchanged, training as they always had, drilling endurance, emphasizing patience and resilience over spectacle. But now every step they took carried weight. The galaxy no longer saw ceremonial relics, it saw warriors forged in hardship. The Ghost Operative's story did not end with his mission. It became a touchstone for every human soldier who followed. They trained with the knowledge that the galaxy had once laughed at them, and that laughter had died in silence. His legend became part of their creed: technology fails, courage endures. Machines break, but humans bend and rise again. Across countless worlds, that lesson echoed, reshaping how war itself was understood. The Empire had entered the conflict believing humanity was an afterthought. It emerged from it with a truth carved into memory: when the storm's blind censors and the strongholds bury themselves too deep, when fleets are useless and certainty collapses, a human will still find a way forward. One operative had proven it. The galaxy would never forget.